Hello, my name is Albert Garcia, and I'm a librarian with the Contra Costa County Library. Thank you for being here for today's program. In just a second, I'm going to hand it over to the lead, but before that, I do want to talk a little bit about the library and also introduce our Spanish interpreter. Today's program will have a Spanish interpretation, and our interpreter, Vanessa Cardenas, is going to come on now to explain how to turn that function on so you can listen to the Spanish audio. Vanessa, take it away.
Hello, thank you for that introduction. So I will be doing the presentation in Spanish as an interpreter. Buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. En esta reunión, ustedes tendrán la oportunidad de tener acceso a la interpretación al español. Solo necesita presionar el símbolo terráqueo en su pantalla o puede buscar los 3 puntitos para seleccionar el idioma al español. Estamos a sus órdenes. Gracias. Thank you. Back to you.
Okay, so I'm going to turn on the interpretation. Okay, you should be able to turn on the Spanish audio now. Okay, again, my name is Albert Garcia, and thank you very much for being here for today's program. In just a second, I'm going to hand it over to the league. But before then, I do want to talk a little bit about the Contra Costa County Library. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. The Contra Costa County Library is happy to connect you with our resources, services, and materials at all 26 of our branches. Access more than 1 million physical items, including international language collections, and thousands of digital materials 24/7 at ccclib.org. Visit any library to use our public computers, printers, and free Wi-Fi. You can also visit one of our branches with laptops for on-site use or check out a Wi-Fi hotspot for 3 weeks. Contra Costa County Library's adult literacy program trains and supports volunteer tutors to deliver basic literacy instruction to adults throughout the county. Visit our website and sign up for a digital library card today. Okay, I'm now going to hand it over to the league for our program. Thank you very much for being here and enjoy our program.
Thank you, Albert. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Gilbert, and on behalf of the Contra Costa County Library, the League of Women Voters Diablo Valley and West Contra Costa County, and the Contra Costa County TV, welcome to today's community conversations. Get the lowdown on 2024 California propositions, pros and cons. Before we begin, let's review a few housekeeping items. This is a Zoom webinar, so the audience's microphones are muted and videos are turned off. If you have any questions for the moderators, please submit them using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the YouTube channels of the Contra Costa County Library and the League of Women Voters Diablo Valley. Site addresses for these YouTube channels will be shown on screen at the end of the program. Additional Contra Costa Television is broadcasting the webinar live today, and we'll be rebroadcasting it on the dates and times posted at the end of the webinar. Contra Costa Television is available to view on Comcast Channel 27, AT&T Uverse Channel 99, Astound Channel 32, and online at contracostatv.org. Contact information for today's guests and the date and subject of the next community conversation will also be shared at the end. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. We empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy and education and litigation at the local, state, and national levels. The League of Women Voters of the United States believes that a democratic government depends on informed and active participation at all levels of government. We invite you to join the League of Women Voters and support this work. To join the League, visit lwvc.org/join. Today's presentation is a review of the pros and cons for the 2024 California ballot propositions. The supporting and opposing arguments come from many sources and are not limited to those presented in the official California Voter Information Guide. The League offers this presentation as part of its mission to inform and educate voters. The League of Women Voters Advocacy Fund separately assesses each proposition based on the League's thorough studies and may or may not offer recommendations. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's moderators, Sue Brandy and Janet Hoy. Sue Brandy has been a member of the League of Women Voters for almost 10 years. She has served on the board for 6 of those years and has worked every election year offering pros and cons presentations to the community. Sue is a retired clinical social worker who worked primarily with clients who had experienced severe trauma, such as law enforcement officers and firefighters. Janet Hoy has been involved with the League for over 10 years. She primarily focuses on elections, working on education and advocacy. Janet has also been involved in local issues with leagues in both North Carolina and California. Janet's professional background was in the health insurance industry, working for insurance companies in a variety of regional roles and working for a large integrated hospital system in San Diego. Thank you both for being here today. Take it away.
Thank you, Sean. Sue is going to bring up our PowerPoint presentation. And as she's doing that, I just want to say welcome to everybody. I think we have just under 300 people, which is totally amazing. And we welcome you all to be here today. And we hope you will get a lot out of this program. We are going to go through, Sue and I are tag teaming the program. So she'll do some of the slides and I'll do others. We encourage you to ask questions. As Sean mentioned, please put your questions in the Q&A. We will answer questions at the end. So next slide. Thank you. Sean mentioned this. I just want to reiterate it for a moment. The League is 104 years old, and we are indeed nonpartisan. All of those 100 years, we have been nonpartisan. And by that, we mean we never endorse or oppose candidates or political parties. We do, though, influence public policy through education and advocacy. And we have our education hats on today as we go through these 10 statewide ballot initiatives.
So what are pros and cons? The pros and cons are an opportunity for you to learn about the ballot measures. It's an unbiased, nonpartisan explanation of the state ballot measures, and it creates an understanding of the issues through telling you about the situation, the context, which also tells you what the proposal is, and both the arguments for and against the proposition. Additionally, we have added some slides that will tell you who actually supports and opposes each measure and who is financing the support and the opposition, because we believe that that helps for you to understand how to make your decision. And I hope we've tried to make these understandable. Some of them are very complex. So bear with us and know that we may be able to answer all of your questions or only some of them. There are 10 initiatives on the ballot, and 5 of these are from the legislature and 5 are from citizens initiatives. The citizens initiatives are those that have gone onto the ballot because of signatures of voters. Those are the people that stand in front of the grocery store and ask you to sign. The California Constitution requires that bond issues and constitutional amendments be approved by voters. Therefore, you will see that the legislature must put initiatives on the ballot for these 2 purposes. We've received our content besides the League of Women Voters of California, who did the primary part of this PowerPoint. We've also gathered information from Ballotpedia, Cal Matters, and Legislative Analyst Office, and some newspaper articles. All right, let's begin with Proposition 2. Proposition 2 is a bond issue that is asking for public school and community college facilities funding. So the situation is that many public schools and community colleges need repair, renovation, and new classrooms. The state government raises money to help build and repair facilities by selling bonds, which are then repaid over time. The proposal is to allow the state to sell $10 billion in bonds to help build and repair schools. That would be $8.5 billion for K-12 and $1.5 billion for community colleges. The fiscal effect would be that the state would need to spend over $500 million per year for the next 35 years to repay the bonds. The effects on local governments depend on school district and college decisions related to the building and repair. These repairs would include broadband access, HVAC, plumbing, and structural improvements. Let's go to the next one. Supporters say that the bonds will pay for badly needed repairs and security improvements, thereby making schools and communities safer, community colleges safer. Opponents say Prop 2 makes taxpayers pay bond interest over many years, and the money will go to wasteful construction projects instead of classroom instruction. One more piece of information is that in January of 2022, the State Auditor's Office estimated that there will be a need for $7.4 billion in state funding over the next 5 years to meet current and anticipated modernization and updating requests. Some opposition to this particular proposition is actually based on the fact that it's sort of an inequitable system. Right now, the districts, and in this bill, there's a slight change, but districts have to pay 40 to 50% of the cost of the local bonds by putting up their own money, getting bond issues locally. And this puts poor districts at a disadvantage. They just aren't able to raise the same amount of money, so they don't get as much money, and they can't do as much work. Supporters, on the other hand, want to add that the improved schools usually end up being improved test scores, improved attendance, and less suspensions. The contributors and funders for Prop 2 are that there was a supporting funding totaling $2.42 million. California Building Industry Association, yes on Prop 2, which is a coalition for adequate school housing issues. The Association of California School Administrators, California Alliance for Jobs, and many smaller donations. There were no opposing funding. However, the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association does oppose this proposition. Janet?
Great, thank you, Sue. So Prop 3 is also one of the propositions that was put on the ballot by the state legislature. You may have heard about this one. Shorthand is that this is the constitutional right to marriage. The question is, should the California Constitution be amended to define marriage as a fundamental right for all, regardless of sex or race, and remove language that states that marriage is only between a man and a woman? So the situation is, the California Constitution was amended actually in 2008 by a former proposition, Proposition 8, to state that marriage was only between a man and a woman. Only that is legal. Subsequent to that, the US Supreme Court ruled that it is unconstitutional to outlaw same-sex marriages. And in fact, as we all know, California now allows same-sex marriages to be performed. So the proposal is to amend the Constitution to enshrine marriage equality regardless of gender, sexual orientation, or race. The fiscal effects is essentially that there will be no change in income or costs to state or local government, so really no impact fiscally. Supporters say the California Constitution should indeed affirm marriage equality, which is the law of the land across the United States. Prop 3 protects the fundamental right to marry, regardless of gender or race. Opponents have a different view. They say same-sex marriage is already legal, so there's no need to change the California Constitution. And they state also that Prop 3 removes all rules for marriage, opening the door to child marriages, incest, and polygamy. Little more information. As I mentioned earlier, in 2008, Prop 8 was passed by the citizens of the state, and that amended the state constitution to specifically state that marriage is only between a man and a woman. Incest and polygamy in the state of California are indeed illegal, and marriage under the age of 18 is also illegal without parental and court approval. So the contributors and funding, supporters are Kevin D. Leon, believing in a better California ballot measure. This one shows up on 1, 2, 3 propositions. This one, Prop 3, Prop 32, and Prop 33. You'll see that name again. Yes on Proposition 3, sponsored by Equality California, Federated Indians of Grafton Rancheria, ACLU, CalWorks, Planned Parenthood. The opposition is from the California Family Council and the American Council of Evangelicals, and we could not find any contributions to the opposition side.
Okay, Proposition 4. Proposition 4 authorizes bonds for safe drinking water, wildfire protection, and protecting communities and natural lands from climate risk. So the question is, should voters let the state sell $10 billion in bonds for various projects to reduce climate risks and impacts? The situation is that the climate change is negatively impacting all Californians, but especially people with low incomes. And we all have experienced this last summer, the hottest summer in California, and I think in the United States, but certainly we've noticed that. The proposal is to allow the state to sell $10 billion in bonds for projects related to water, wildfire, coastal resilience, fish, wildlife, clean air, and to mitigate extreme heat. The fiscal effects would be that the state would pay about $400 million annually for 40 years to repay the bonds. Protecting natural resources could reduce the costs of future damage. Those who support this proposition say that Prop 4 will help protect our communities, health, and the economy. Opponents say that bonds are the most expensive way to fund government spending and should not be used. Prop 4 provides funding for unproven technologies with no real evidence of success. Supporters say that the Clean Action, National Wildfire Federation, California Professional Firefighters, and California Labor Federation. There were miscellaneous small donors that raised $639,000. Opponents who had no funding were the Herod Jarvis Taxpayer Association, Senate GOP leader Brian Jones, and Assembly member Jim Patterson. I think, before we do that, I just would like to add that 40% of the funding for this proposition would go to low-income communities, and that there's some belief that the relative cost of investing in the infrastructure of the would cost and the cost of recovery for climate change is about the same. There's a minimal difference. 40 years ago, the US had $1 billion disaster every 4 years. Now it happens every 3 weeks.
Thank you, Sue. So Prop 5, this is another bond issue, allows local bonds for affordable housing and public infrastructure with 55% voter approval. So the question is, should local bond measures to fund housing bonds for low and middle income Californians and public infrastructure be allowed to pass with 55% voter approval instead of the 66.7% approval currently required? So it's changing that voter level threshold. So the situation is, as I just said, 66.7% of voters to vote yes to pass a local bond measure today. And affordable housing is a key issue across the state, as it is in many states across the country. The proposal is simply to lower the voting requirement so that some types of local bond measures will pass with 55% of the vote instead of 66.7. There is negligible fiscal impact, so it will have little impact on state budget, but might impact local budgets. Supporters say Prop 5 will give local communities more tools to make housing affordable, and it will allow local voters to address community needs such as housing and safe streets. Opponents say that Prop 5 changes the existing protections from high debt caused by bond issues in the California Constitution, and that it would push the cost of infrastructure onto local governments and taxpayers and away from the state. It's a little bit of additional information. I think we all agree that there is a significant shortage of affordable housing up and down the state. Lowering the voter threshold to pass affordable housing and infrastructure bonds helps local governments meet state mandates for new housing units, which are true up and down the state. It does also include a ban on using any of these bond funds to buy single-family homes to convert into affordable units. So that means single-family homes are sort of off the market for this particular bond issuance. Opponents are the California Association of Realtors. You can see 22 million, National Association of Realtors, California Business Roundtable, California Business Properties Association. So a fair amount of real estate interests are against this. And Gerald J. Marcel, 100K. You can see the totals here. Supporters are California professional firefighters, as well as Habitat for Humanity. And I want to just raise one additional thing. 24 years ago, in the year 2000, voters passed Prop 39. That reduced the voter threshold for local school bonds from 66.7 down to 55%, which is the same proposal we're hearing in Prop 5.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Proposition 6. Proposition 6 eliminates the constitutional provision allowing involuntary servitude for incarcerated persons. So the question is, should the California Constitution be amended to remove the provision that allows involuntary servitude to be used as punishment for a crime, prohibit punishment for refusing a work assignment, and allow voluntary working assignments in exchange for credit to reduce sentences? Here's the situation in this particular case. The California Constitution right now prohibits, California Constitution prohibits forced labor except as punishment for a crime. There are 16 states, including California, that allow this exception. The proposal is to amend the Constitution to prohibit involuntary servitude for any reason, prohibit disciplining people in prison who refuse to take a work assignment. The fiscal effects is that the effect on the state and local costs are really uncertain. Any effect unlikely to exceed tens of millions of dollars annually. So supporters say that Prop 6 restores the human dignity by ending forced labor, which constitutes slavery and violates human rights. It also improves public safety by focusing on rehabilitation of incarcerated people. Opponents did not submit any argument against Prop 6. This was placed on the ballot by a bipartisan support from the legislature, and it was introduced originally by the California Legislative Black Caucus, who explained that the passage supports rehab and reintegration of incarcerated people by allowing choice of meaningful rehab and education. So contributors and funders, the support was totaled about $319,000, and it came from All of Us or None Action Network, ACLU in Northern California, the Communities of United for Restorative Youth Justice, and miscellaneous other smaller donations. Other supporters include the California Teachers Association and the California Black Legislative Caucus. There's no funding opposed to this. However, Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association does oppose it.
Okay, moving on to Prop 32, which would raise the minimum wage. The question is, should California raise its statewide minimum wage to $18 an hour, it's currently 16, by January 1st, 2026, and then increase it again each year based on inflation? So this current statewide minimum wage is $16. Certain industries and cities have higher minimum wages. And actually, there's a couple of industries you guys probably know about. Healthcare workers are at, starting in June of this year, 2024, they are at $23 an hour. They will go up to, in June 2026, $25 an hour. And fast food workers, as of April of 2024, are at $20 an hour. The proposal is to raise the minimum wage to $18 an hour for all employees, absent those that I just mentioned, by 2026. Wage would adjust for the cost of living each year after 2026. It would not lower wages for people already making over $18 an hour. So there could be some fiscal effects. Higher wages for state and local employees will increase government costs because people would have to be raised up to that threshold. Revenues will likely decrease. There could be lower use of Medi-Cal and CalFresh, and that could save hundreds of millions of dollars a year because people will be making more money and would not be at the thresholds to meet the requirements for Medi-Cal and CalFresh. Supporters say raising the minimum wage will improve the standard of living for millions of workers and promote economic fairness. Opponents say raising the minimum wage is going to hurt businesses, will clearly raise prices, and could cause job losses. Taxes may be raised if governments pay more wages. Supporters and opponents. Supporters are Working Hero Action for the Living Wage, Kevin D. Leon, who I mentioned before, for a total of about 10.8 million. Opponents are Californians Against Job Losses and Higher Prices, No on 32, for $10,000.
All right, moving right along, Proposition 33. This proposition expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property. The question is, should the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act of 1995, which is right now a state law, be repealed so local governments can regulate rents? The situation is that state law right now prevents rent control on single-family homes and housing built after early 1995. Some cities have some form of rent control, whether it's before 1995 or other ways that are within the limits of the law. And that rent control, it does limit how much landlords can increase their unit rent. The proposal is to remove the law that prohibits rent control on single-family homes and housing built after early 1995. This would stop the state from limiting local governments from having rent control. The fiscal effect is that there'd be little effect on state budget, but will impact local budgets. It will depend on how many cities and counties pass rent control laws and what landlords do. Supporters say that Proposition 33 will allow local governments to protect renters, and that local voters will be able to decide on whether and how to control rents. Opponents say that Prop 33 will increase costs to build housing, therefore making the state's housing crisis worse, and that Prop 33 will drive up costs for renters and home buyers. Prop 33 supporters and contributors are AIDS Healthcare Foundation. Note that they are the bulk of the financial support at 30.5 million. Kevin De Leon for Lieutenant Governor, 600,000. United Here, Local 11, and miscellaneous donations under 10,000. There are also supporters, renters, and homeowners for rent control who, yes, on 33, and Kevin De Leon believing in a better California, yes, on 3, 32, and 33, and those aren't tied to fundraising. Opposition is that the California Apartment Association has 21.5 million, California Association of Realtors, the National Association of Realtors, the California Association of Realtors, issues mobilization PAC, Michael Hyde, including Western National Group and affiliated entities, and other donations of $1 million or under. So it was $53.9 million in opposition. On that last one, on Proposition 3, just want to add that this appears to be a somewhat simple question, but there's a warning out there that it's a really complex choice between balancing the needs for housing now against potential long-term impacts on housing. And that's kind of how you have to weigh the balance. Okay, Janet.
Yep. So Prop 34 is kind of connected to Prop 33. You notice that the big contributor to Prop 33 is the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And in fact, the initiative has been backed by Michael Weinstein and the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And that'll make a little more sense as we get to the end of this portion. So Prop 34 restricts spending of prescription drug revenues by certain, and I focus on certain, healthcare providers. The question, should certain healthcare providers be required to spend 98% of revenues from a federal discount prescription drug program, which is known as the 340B program, on direct patient care, and should the state be permanently authorized to negotiate Medi-Cal drug prices? So the situation, healthcare providers earn revenue from this 340B program, the federal drug discount program, and then they decide how to spend the income. Medi-Cal provides coverage to people with low income. And I might add here, Medi-Cal is a really big program. Many people are surprised about how big it is. And I have it here, but there are millions and millions of people in Medi-Cal. Sorry, I can't find it, but it's a very big program in our state. It's a very big program nationally. And in fact, is the biggest kind of insurance program in the country, far bigger than Medicare. So the proposal is to create new rules about how these certain healthcare providers spend the money earned from this 340B program, the discount drug program. And it allows the state to permanently negotiate Medi-Cal drug prices. You probably know we just got past the ability for the government, the federal government, to negotiate Medicare drug prices. Medi-Cal has been negotiating drug prices for a while. So the fiscal effects could be millions of dollars to identify and punish providers who violate this new law. Fines will likely be imposed on those providers, and not sure how big those fines would be. So a little bit of a question mark about exactly how much that will be.
Sorry.
Supporters say Prop 34 will ensure that the money from the discounted drug program is used only for direct patient care. Prop 34 will make the discount drug program of Medi-Cal permanent. Opponents say that Prop 34 targets one healthcare provider. That's why I was focusing on that word certain. That supports rent control, which is the AIDS Healthcare Foundation from Prop 33. Federal law currently allows the profits from drug discounts to support any nonprofit mission of healthcare providers. So supporters and opponents. Supporters are yes on 34, protect patients now, just under 15 million, and the California Apartment Association. Opponents are Stop the Revenge Initiative, no on 34, with 120,000 in donations, and of course the AIDS Healthcare Foundation.
Okay, Proposition 35. Proposition 35 provides permanent funding for Medi-Cal healthcare services. And the question is, should California make permanent an existing tax on managed healthcare plans to provide ongoing funding for Medi-Cal and other healthcare services? So just to stick with Medi-Cal for a minute here, as Janet was talking about, there's almost 15 million Californians who are on Medi-Cal. And Medi-Cal, please remember, is a Medicaid program that is partially funded by the federal government and partially funded by the state. It is not Medicare. Medicare is the program that is national. It is a federal program for seniors. Just wanted to be sure we were clear about that. So the situation right now is that California pays for part of its share of Medi-Cal through a temporary tax on managed care organizations. And this proposal would make the existing temporary tax on managed care organizations permanent. It would also create new rules for how the tax money can be spent. The fiscal effects are that an increase of $2 to $5 billion per year to fund Medi-Cal and other health programs would develop within a few years. Additional costs to cover services are not included in Proposition 35. So some areas of health services are covered and some are not, I think is what they're trying to say there. Supporters say that Prop 33 will support health services and improve access to doctors that help low-income people. Opponents did not provide an argument in time for the this to come out, but there have been several organizations and groups that have provided opposition, and so the San Francisco Chronicle summarized some of that in their editorial that they opposed. They call this ballot box budgeting, which means that it eliminates flexibility of the legislature to figure out how to create a budget that is most effective in both years that we have a lot of money and years we don't have very much money. It also requires a 3/4 vote in both legislative houses to change the law. That is an exceptional number that is pretty hard to get to, or a new proposition to go to the voter for any change. The federal government has warned California that Prop 5 exploits the system, and therefore funding could be reduced in future years. Supporters and funding. California Hospitals Committee on Issues, Global Medical Response, California Medical Association, California Primary Care Association, Air Methods Corporation, Altamed Health Services Corporation, California Dental Association, Family Health Center of San Diego, and miscellaneous other donors that were less than $1 million. The total was $48.7 million. Opponents and funding, there were no reported donations. The opponents are the California Pan-Ethnic Health Network, the Children's Partnership, the California Alliance for Retired Americans, and Courage California. And part of the issue here is that the smaller nonprofits will not get the same, and clinics will not get the same funding through this proposition as the doctors and some of the larger ones would. Yeah.
Okay, so finishing up on the propositions, Prop 36 allows felony charges and increases sentences for certain drug and theft crimes. The question is, should California allow people to be charged with felonies for possessing certain drugs and for thefts under $950 if the defendant has 2 prior drug or theft convictions? So charged with felonies versus misdemeanors. So the situation is, in 2014, Prop 47 was passed, and that turned nonviolent crimes like drug possession and shoplifting into misdemeanors unless someone had prior convictions for serious crimes, so were a repeat offender. The proposal in Prop 36 is to turn those misdemeanors back into felonies, to lengthen prison sentences, and require that some sentences be served in prisons versus jails. The fiscal effects: increased state and local costs for prisons, jails, and mental health and drug treatment would likely be tens to hundreds of millions of dollars annually, so big impact. There we go. Supporters of Prop 36 says that Prop 36 will make communities safer by holding people who repeatedly steal accountable and making those thieves and drug dealers serve tougher and longer sentences. Opponents say that Prop 36 would make California less safe by stopping crime prevention and drug treatment programs. And Prop 36 would cost taxpayers billions of dollars, presumably because the intent of Prop 36 is to lengthen sentences and have more people, the crimes would be considered felonies versus misdemeanors, so there'd be more people in prison, and that would cost more money. Opponents say Prop 36 erodes our criminal justice system by reversing advances we've had at aiming at reducing mass incarceration. So the effects of Prop 47 were to reduce the prison population. It imposes stricter sentencing laws that disproportionately impact lower income and people of color communities. And it shifts dollars that were saved by Prop 47 by reducing the number of folks in prison and reducing sentences. It shifts those dollars that were used from treatment and rehab back to prisons. So it's undoing what was done by Prop 47. Supporters of Prop 36 are yes on 36, Californians for Safe Stores and Neighborhoods, and then some big box retailers, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, 7-Eleven, and then California Business Roundtable. Opponents are the Committee to Protect Public Safety, no on Prop 36, 195,000, and ACLU of Northern California for 100,000. So as I said, Prop 36 would roll back parts of Prop 47, which was passed in 2014, intended to reduce prison overcrowding. Again, it changes some misdemeanors back into felonies, and it imposes longer and harsher sentences for drug possession and retail theft. And it will shift incarceration from county jails to state prison. The Legislative Analyst's Office estimates the increase in state prison population will result in increased costs of prisons, local and state courts. And it will reduce dollars for programs for crime victims, K-12 education, or K-12 kids, and those in need of mental health and substance abuse services. And that's it for our 10 ballot measures. As I said before, we will take questions at the end. We just have a couple more slides to go, and then we'll be ready for your questions. So it wouldn't be the league unless we talked a little bit about the upcoming election. You all know November 5th is the official election day. Ballots will be mailed by the county starting on October the 7th. The last day to register by mail is 10/21, although you can register on November 5th and you will cast a provisional ballot. Drop boxes open on October the 8th. Be sure and sign your ballot. That's very important, and I think your ballot will be cured, and we'll ask for your signature if you do not sign it. A really good way to figure out where your ballot is after you put it in the mail is where'smyballot.sos, which is Secretary of State, .ca.gov. And you will get a text back that will tell you when your ballot was received and when it was processed and counted, etc. You can also go to the Secretary of State of California, sos.ca.gov, and to our county elections department, contracostavote.gov.
Okay, and finally, we just want to let you know, remind you about the League's program, Vote 411. The program that was used in the past in California was called Voter's Edge. That is no longer being used by the League. Vote 411 is being used. And Vote 411 is a nationwide voter portal presented by the League Educational Fund. In this program, you go online and you put in your address, exactly your street address, and it shows you your ballot. It will tell you your local candidates as well as your state candidates and your national candidates. It will also tell you ballot measures and I believe your local measures that will be up for vote as well. I think you get your entire ballot. And so you're really getting a one-stop shopping to be able to see what's going to be on your ballot. And your candidates are expected and asked to put their statements into this website so that you're hearing directly from the candidates. And if there's nothing under a candidate, it means they have failed to put in their information. Okay, I think that takes care of things, and we can go back to questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we're going to, oh, wrong one. There we go.
Okay, I would like to say that someone put their hand up. In this webinar, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. We are not recognizing hands up. This is not like a Zoom. This is a Zoom webinar. So the first question, Janet, did you have something?
No, I was just going to answer the first couple of questions because it looked like they were all.
Yeah, the Prop
Two.
2 funds are for repair. Is new construction included?
The answer is yes.
Okay. Compare the funding provided in Prop 2 and what was said would be needed in the next 5 years.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the question.
Compare the funding provided in Prop 2 and what was said would be needed in the next 5 years.
I can't do that off the top of my head, but I'll look if we go on, if you want to see if the next question,
Okay.
or if that person would put their email in the chat, we can get back to them. I don't have those exact numbers right now.
They would have to put it in the Q&A with their question. So
Right.
the person asked that question, please put your name and then your question and your email. If a vote for Prop 2, if voting for Prop 2, is there a present budget for school repairs? Is there a budget now that allows for budget repairs?
I think that there is, but don't believe there is. I believe what I was reading was that all of the money that had been procured for funding for school repairs had been, if not actually spent, at least it was determined what it would be spent for. So this is new. And I want to say that if I go back, if I don't have it in front of me right now, but I believe it was $10 billion that they were asking for repairs. And the estimate back in 22, not this year, was 7.5 billion. And some of that, there's probably more needed now.
Okay.
I'd also add that in Prop 2, just so everybody kind of understands, 40 to 50% of the costs are borne by the local school district. So they have to raise bonds. They have to get the okay from their local communities to raise bonds to supplement the dollars that would be coming from the feds. I'm sorry, from the state. So that's just important part of this to keep in mind.
And the person that gave that question said, you did mention a prediction of the need in the next 5 years, but I didn't catch the amount of money.
It was 7.4 billion. And again, that was made in 2022, not this year.
Okay. On Prop 3, how is race mentioned in Prop 3?
Okay, what Prop 3 says is the right to marry is a fundamental right. The inalienable rights to enjoy life and liberty and to pursue and obtain safety, happiness, and privacy guaranteed by Section 1, and the right to due process, etc. So as I read this, and I'm getting this from my general election handbook, is that the right to marry is a fundamental right. So they're striking out what is currently in the state constitution. Only marriage between a man and a woman is valid or considered in California. That gets stricken, and instead it says the right to marry is a fundamental right.
So
And I believe that the interpretation of some people is that because of the way that it is phrased, it also protects interracial marriages. And
one more question on 3. Does it eliminate the law against incest, allowing family members to be in romantic relationships?
No.
It does not. That law remains in force. Ditto the law on polygamy, and ditto the requirements around under 18-year-olds marrying.
Okay. On Prop 4 and 5, I think, how do these bonds affect both state and property taxes, and why are realtors against 5?
It does not affect property taxes, because property taxes, I believe, are set. Those don't get changed 1 year to the next.
They
So
would be changed if they're local projects that passes bonds. The cost of those bonds are passed on to the property owner. Right.
So they're paid through the general fund, not through through taxation.
Correct. So Prop 4, it authorizes $10 billion in state bonds.
Right.
So you and I could go out and put some money into the state bond, and we'll get a return on it over 30 or 35 years. The state has to pay back the amount of the bond, the face value of the bond, as well as all of that interest, and that would come out of the general fund.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. Do you agree, and I'm not sure you can agree because the league doesn't take that position, that the provisions for borrowed funds be repaid with will increase property taxes and further increase the cost of home ownership?
I guess the only comment I would make is that if local governments pass bonds that we would all vote on, the threshold might change as a result of one of these propositions, then the cost of those bonds again show up on your property tax bill. And if you pull up your property tax bill, you can see all of them, right? So that would cost money in local to local people from local government bonds.
Okay. Prop 6, where is forced labor occurring now and what kind of labor are they talking about? Is this a commonly used method to punish crime?
It is happening in the prisons where people are being forced to work at different contracts that come into the prisons for $1 an hour, sometimes 50 cents an hour. And what the request is to change is that these jobs could still come in, but they would have to be paid at a fair wage. And they do not define that necessarily as minimum wage. They just say a fair wage. And so these are all within the prison system, as far as I know.
And in addition, I think there's some speculation that because of this fair wage statement, that there will be litigation around this. And there will have to be sort of a judicial process to figure out how to determine that fair wage. And if it indeed is the minimum wage, that would clearly change the costs for prison labor.
And the other thing is that in some areas, and I don't know specifically where, but within prisons, people are disciplined by being forced to work at certain types of jobs, and not sure what those types of jobs are, but they are forced to work. And there's a question of whether that's appropriate discipline, since the discipline that has been that they have been given has been to be in prison.
Okay, though Prop 6 would prioritize rehab, there's no word in the proposition saying that.
I think that is just, I don't know that. I can't say that for sure. Actually, Proposition 6 enhances public safety. Oh, wait a minute, that's through the argument. Let me make sure I'm getting the.
I'm not sure that's even a question. Is the question, why doesn't it include rehab if you think it doesn't?
It says although I thought you said Prop 6 would prioritize rehabilitation, but no words in the proposition say that.
That is what the California Black Caucus said. That was a quote from them saying that that's what the effect of doing this would be.
Okay. How does Prop 35 exploit the system? And also, doesn't Prop 35 penalize those in managed care plans?
It does not penalize. The managed care plans are supporting this, actually. And what was the first question?
How does it exploit the system? And doesn't it penalize those in managed care plans?
I'm not sure how it exploits it. I know that the federal government has said this is an exploitation, and I think it's because it has created a permanent tax, and because it creates a permanent use of the money, and it limits how it can be changed. And the federal government wants there to be more flexibility. I believe that is the reason.
Okay.
Yeah, and the tax, as I understand it, the taxes for managed care companies is different for their commercial patients, so through commercial members, through employers, et cetera, than it is for Medi-Cal. And remember, Medi-Cal is a program that's shared. 70% is paid by the federal government, 30% or so by state and local government. So the federal government has a big portion of this financially. And the issue is that the federal government has to approve the way this tax is done. They're part of this scenario. And if we put the tax in permanently, that could cause some angst, as already has been apparently suggested, by the federal government, because they are part of this. I think I said that inartfully. It's a negotiation, apparently. And the federal government has a significant amount of say about how this tax is used in the state.
Right, and they have a big stake in it.
Okay, does the current minimum wage law include annual and regular increases?
It does. It includes increases based on inflation that are annual. I think they are capped after a couple of years. But yes, it does include increases.
Okay, and someone says, can you please discuss 32 a little more? The impacts are not clear to me.
In terms of the minimum wage, that's 32. I think the impacts are a little uncertain. It depends. It could impact the amount our state government have to pay employees, because I suspect some employees that the state government has are under $18 an hour. So that could certainly be an impact. I think for employers, if they have employees who make less than $18 an hour, they will have to raise them up. And in turn, if somebody is already at $18 an hour, they may have to raise their wages too to compensate for this.
And this does not include employers who have less than, I believe, 26 employees. I believe they have to have, that it's businesses that are large enough to employ at least 26 people.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mention that that's Prop 32. Yeah, I failed to mention this. So employers with 26 or more go to $18 an hour in 2025, 2026. Employers with fewer than, I guess, 26 and fewer than employees go to $17 an hour, 2025, and then $18 an hour, 2026. So it's phased in for smaller employers, because the impact could be pretty big if you have 20 employees, right? And it pauses the inflation adjustments until 2027. So it will go in 2025, 2026, and then the inflation adjustments don't start until 2027. Forgive me for not mentioning that at the time.
So this other person says, is minimum wage currently adjusted yearly for inflation or not?
Oh, current. I don't know the answer to that, actually.
Okay.
So do you know that?
No, I do not believe that. I think minimum wage is set after those couple of years, because if you look back in our history, like $15 an hour lasted many years. I remember getting $2 an hour, and that lasted for many years. But those were all minimum wages. And so it's only when it's put into the law, and in this case, it's just for 2 years, 3 years, to allow the employee or employers to bring it up to the final amount. And then after that, it stays the same. And that is how it has been in the past, I believe.
Okay, 2 people want to know if the league is recommending any yes or no support or stating a position on any of these ballot measures.
The league does take positions. This is a educational format where we're walking through all of the propositions. We invite you to go to our website and take a look at other general voting and election information, including the positions that we take.
Yeah, I think the league calls them recommendations.
Sorry, you were totally right. Recommendation.
Just want to use that word. Okay. All right. Hold on a second. Just wanted to confirm that the mention of Prop 33 on the slide for Prop 35 was a typo.
It was a typo.
It was. That's one of the state slides. We couldn't change it at all. Good catch.
Okay. Let's see. You did mention a prediction of the need in the next, you know what? Ms. Cohen, I don't know which proposition you are talking about. If you can put that in the Q&A again, that would be helpful. How do we go about finding out where the funding comes from in favor or opposition to the proposition when most of what I see are named groups? I don't know who's actually behind these groups.
I think that you don't always know the people, but if you look at Cal Matters on online or Ballotpedia, they go into a lot of detail of who is supporting and who is either in support or opposing, and in their funding in a lot more detail than we did, because they go down to all the little amounts down to hundreds of dollars. So Ballotpedia and Cal Matters.
And that's such an excellent point. Sue and I added the information on support and opposition in the dollars. That was not included as part of the state information. And they were one point in time. The dollars have probably gone up. We still got a few more weeks to go before the election. We really think that it is incredibly important and very revealing if you look at where the dollars are going and from whom. So I applaud you for wanting to dig in a little deeper. It can be incredibly helpful in figuring out the real story of who's behind these propositions.
What is the process and requirement for creating a new proposition for future ballots?
I'm sorry, the processing?
No, what is the process that one needs to go through and the requirements for creating a proposition?
Well, if it's a initiative that is being put on the ballot by the public, someone in the public, it's usually somebody who has special interest in that particular topic, but they have to get enough signatures from voters, and I will not be able to remember unless Janet is looking this up as we're speaking.
I'm looking it up right now.
It has to be a percentage, 5% of the number of people who voted for governor in the last election. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a percentage of that. So for an initiative statute, I'm reading, this might not be exactly it. It's 546,000 and change. Initiative constitutional amendment is higher. It's 874,000 and change. It's a lot of signatures, and it's some percentage of the voters that voted in the last gubernatorial election. It's really very specific.
And those signatures have to pass, inspection. A lot of them get thrown out because they get them in front of the grocery store, and different people sign them that aren't registered to vote, or they sign it in 2 different places or something. So those signatures have to happen. Then it goes to the election, or probably this state office.
Secretary of State.
Right, Secretary of State. And they figure out how to phrase it and begin to collect information. The legislature, as we said earlier, if it's a constitutional amendment or if it's a bond measure, the legislature has to pass it themselves, but then they have to pass it on to the voters to confirm it. They can't just change the Constitution or create bond issues, bond for taxes without, or general fund, without having it passed through the voters. That answer the question?
I hope so, but I have to scroll down, look further, but we will see. Several people have asked, you did seem not to have addressed the question about why realtors are against Prop 4. Do you know why?
Well, there is a lot of controversy, and the reason is that why they're against Prop 4 and climate change. Actually, I don't know the answer to that. I was thinking that it was in regards to a different proposition. I don't know why realtors are against it. I know that there are a lot of people that are against taxes that are against it. Again, if you put your name and your email in the chat, we will try to find that answer.
We'll have them put it in Q&A since they can't access the chat. Isn't Prop 3 a preemptive measure to protect California LGBTQ marriage in case the Supreme Court removes it, like in Roe versus Wade?
Yeah,
It is.
Okay.
part of the reasoning.
And
So just like Prop 1 was back in March.
Okay.
I'm sorry, totally wrong. The old Prop 1 a couple of years ago, the reproductive rights, sorry.
Okay.
That Prop 1 was different.
Can you expand on the quote unquote revenge initiative aspect of Prop 34 relative to 33?
So, these are baffling. I'll back up a tiny bit. Sue was talking about getting initiatives and stuff on the ballot. The idea behind citizen initiatives is that you or I could get a group of people together who feel really strongly about an issue, and we build a team to go out there and get signatures and get something on the ballot because we feel strongly about it. unfortunately, in my view, these days it's often kind of bigger businesses and commercial operations that have a particular take on something that might be happening that they do or do not like, and they can put a lot of money into it. I mean, I think most of the people you see at the farmers markets getting signatures are paid, right? Because it's kind of a big business. They make money by doing that. And it is orchestrated by business interests very often. So it's not, we think of us as citizens initiatives, but they're a little bit removed from that. 34, 33, and 34 seem to be, to me, to be connected, and to everyone else, I think. The real estate industry and the apartment industry, et cetera, does not like rent control. And apparently AIDS Healthcare Foundation supports that and has put a lot of money into it. And I think, this is truly just speculation on my part, but I think that the Proposition 34, which seems to specifically focus on AIDS Healthcare Foundation and presumably using the money from this federal prescription drug program, has something to do with real estate. So they want to kneecap AIDS Healthcare Foundation so that they will not be putting money towards rent control, which they don't agree with. I hope that made sense. I wasn't sure halfway through if it was making sense, but
I also just want to add that there is a lot of controversy in California as to whether our whole initiative process needs to be amended and updated and things, that it makes for a lot of things coming to the voters that really we shouldn't have to decide. Just because, and if all of you remember the dialysis propositions that came for several years, really didn't give us enough information. You know, medically, we can't make those decisions. So it is a controversial process that we are involved in.
Okay. One person says managed care plans would be taxed. Wouldn't members of the plan pay for the tax?
I come from the managed care industry, and I guess it would be included as part of premiums, yes. It's kind of considered a cost of doing business in California. And I think the managed care companies are used to this, and it's just part of what they do.
Okay, would Prop 6 also affect forced labor in court required rehab conducted by religious and other private and/or profit organizations? Also, rehab is funded by savings from Prop 47, reduction of prison populations, so increased populations would reduce rehab.
Yes, it would reduce rehab, it would reduce funds for victims, it would reduce the educational programs that happen in K through 12 education. There was a list of them on that slide, so that's absolutely correct.
Okay, with regard to Prop 36, can the authors of the proposition find out the cost resulting from the implementation of the proposition before they finalize it and make amendments until it makes sense? For example, instead of prison, the offender might be required to perform supervised community service, perform work on behalf of the community to repay the dollar value of items stolen, an X number of years probation, rehab, including an essay on why we don't do drugs, sell drugs, steal, touch anything that does not belong to us without permission from the owner, etc. If they can't read or write, teach them how during rehab. So the question is, can the authors of the proposition find out the costs resulting from the implementation of the proposition before they finalize it and make amendments until it makes sense?
Well, I guess that could have been part of the process. They may have worked with the legislature prior to putting this on the ballot to try to negotiate something that would become statute. But this is already on the ballot, so I think the horse is out of the barn in that one.
Right. Yeah, it's finalized now.
What is the league's website address?
lwvdv.org. That's Diablo Valley. League of Women Voters, DiabloValley.org.
Can you explain how Prop 34 is connected to rent control? You mentioned the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, excuse me.
So the AIDS Healthcare Foundation is in favor of rent control, and they put a lot of money behind Prop 33. The business community, particularly focused on apartments and the realty industry, does not like rent control, and they want to punish the AIDS Healthcare Foundation for their support of it. That's why it's called the Revenge Proposition or whatever.
Revenge Initiative, right.
Revenge Initiative, thank you.
CalMatters and what other websites can one go to find funding information?
CalMatters, Ballotpedia. I think those are the two main ones we used. Perhaps the Legislative Analyst's Office would have finance things on it, but definitely Ballotpedia is very detailed. CalMatters is a little less detailed, but a lot easier, a lot more user-friendly.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling through a little bit more. You may have answered this. Out of the 10 measures, is there a way to identify on the ballot form which ones were by signatures of citizens versus legislature?
The first, the ones that are numbered 2 through 6 are the legislature, and the ones that are numbered 32 through 36 are signatured.
Yep.
Okay. TV ads for 33 seem to be saying yes on 33 and no on 34, and vice versa for ads supporting 34. Can you address that?
Yeah. I don't understand the question really, what is being asked.
Oh, she's giving us information. It's not a question. It was just a statement.
Okay.
Um,
You know, can I just interject? 33 and 34 are head scratching. It just baffles me why this is before us as voters. You know, it just seems like an internal, inside the beltway kind of thing that's going on. And that's why it's so challenging to sort of read through this and figure out what the real story is and what's the real agenda. So we hope we shed a little bit of light on that. It's still something that probably shouldn't be in front of voters. It seems sort of not the right venue to solve this dispute.
okay. Sorry, just a moment. What is the difference between measures and propositions?
I actually think that we're just using those terms interchangeably, especially on a state level. I want to say that measures are often referred to as local government, but I'm not even positive about that. We are using them interchangeably.
Okay, just making sure I haven't missed anyone's question. Just a moment.
These are some terrific questions. Thank you, everybody. These are great.
There's a thank you to the League for doing these programs over the years. So thank you, Janet, and thank you, Sue, and the League.
I want to mention that this is actually the first time we have presented to the public this information. So you have really helped us by asking some questions that can allow us to move on to our next presentations and fill in some of these answers. Thank you.
And if you want to see this all over again, but live, we're having a live free public session on the pros and cons of the 10 statewide ballot initiatives this coming Monday, September 30th, 7 p.m., Pleasant Hill Community Center. So please join us. Tell anybody who you think perhaps missed this and whatever wants a live event. All are welcome.
And may I also add that this is being recorded and it will be on the YouTube channels of the Contra Costa County Library and the League of Women Voters Diablo Valley. It is also going to be repeated, and we will show you at the end on CCTV again. One of our League members just shared that, hold on just a second. Sean, would you share that? Let's see. I think she said Open Secrets was another site people could go to for information. So certainly use that information. I think we should also add that a resource document will be sent out to everyone who participated in this webinar that will give you these resources when you receive that email. So you will have resources. We also indicate the ones that are in Spanish for our Spanish speakers.
Because we've had so many really good questions, this has been a great audience. I would invite you to consider joining the League and getting involved in this at a more granular level. We have 25 or 30 now community presentations to do this exact presentation over the next 3 weeks. That's a lot. And we need, I think we have all of ours covered right now, but we need people who are interested in this kind of stuff and would be interested in working through it and presenting it publicly. So if you're at all interested, our local league is filled with fun people and are involved in important issues, just like the ballot propositions.
A question on Prop 2. You stated the state would spend 500 million per year. How many years is that anticipated until paid?
It was either 35 or 40. I believe it was 35 years for Prop 2. And then Prop 4 was 40, but it may be the reverse. It's either 35 years or 40.
Okay, and when will polling places and ballot box locations be available online?
Not sure about polling places online. Don't know anything about that. Polling places, maybe
the elections office?
The elections office. It's also in
early
the-
voting sites, maybe early voting sites. There's some of those the weekend before the 5th of November.
I
Not
believe
sure.
it's also in the document the elections office has just sent out. You can find it.
Cool. Thank you.
That's correct.
And Sean has wanted to share that another site that one can go to is a News Literacy Project and All Sides to learn about reputable information in this age of mis and disinformation. We certainly want to know that. The other one is now sorry, it's escaping me, but there's one other one. Snoops is another one. Why shouldn't 33 be on the ballot? Isn't it asking whether you want there to be more rent control?
I think the concern is that it's not as straightforward of a motivation for putting it on as it appears. And that's where the part of the complexity. But that is a part of a kind of background argument that's going on that may or may not be totally accurate. It's hard to figure out exactly what the issues are, who's doing what for what reason. Yes, in general, we should be able to make a decision about the rent control. I would agree with that.
How much is the state paying yearly to repay previous bonds? Don't know. Okay. One commenter wants to share their appreciation for the presentation, so thank you. Let's see. Yes, you are correct that chat is disabled and the place to put your questions is in Q&A. One person said they're not on the web Zoom. I'm on the web Zoom, not an app. So I'm not sure what your challenge is, but Q&A is what we are using. Our meetings for the LWV, I think you mean the League of Women Voters in person, and if so, where, or are they virtual? I don't know if Melissa's referring to the pros and cons, or if she's referring to just our own meetings, but you can address both.
Well, our board meetings, I think, I'm no longer on the board. I think our board meetings are alternate virtual and then in person. We do have a monthly lunch, actually, at Bar Camino in Walnut Creek, the second Wednesday of the month, 11:30 to 1. And it's a great way to meet some league people, know what's going on with the league. If you just want to see if this is the kind of group you might want to join, it's a great way to do it. No host. I mean, you have to buy your own lunch, but the food is really good. And the conversations are terrific. We've recruited a number of people to do these pros and cons presentations, as well as mis and disinformation presentations, from people who came to those lunches and were thinking about joining the league, and they got plugged into these two programs, and they've been really valuable members of our team. So I would encourage you to do that.
And I just want to add that if you want more information about the league and the events that are coming up, and whether they're virtual or whether they're in person, that is almost completely on the website, lwvdv.org.
One person said, what do you think of the idea when in doubt, vote no?
No opinion. I don't think that's up to us to make that decision.
Okay. I think so far, I'm going to check one more time. We have covered most of the questions. We just have a few more minutes if anyone else has any more questions before we close. Oh, someone asked, can only women join the league?
No, what a great question. My husband's a member and
Mine.
Sue's husband is a member. There's a a small number, but a number of men who join and work actively. Our treasurer is male, and he's actually doing pros and cons presentations and mis and disinformation presentations. And we really do invite men. It's really nice to have sort of a mix of people within the league. We've been really lucky that we've recently gotten a couple of really young folks who are interested in the league. And I have to tell you, it's so refreshing and a little humbling to realize how much the world has changed, and to have a different perspective. So absolutely, men and women alike are more than welcome in the league.
Great. Will you be doing any more Miss and Dis presentations?
Yes, we have. Actually, I have one at Los Medanos next week. We just did some at the other community colleges, and we can schedule them into the future. We have a number of them scheduled through October.
Janet, could you give the name of the restaurant again and the next date of the meeting of the lunch?
Yes, I think it is October 11. Hang on. I am out of town, but they carry on without me. No, that's wrong. It must be October 9th. That's a Wednesday. Bar Camino. It's right across from the Walnut Creek Library, same side. Mexican restaurant, big outdoor patio. We are inside in a sort of sequestered area. Starts at 11:30.
And could you explain a little bit more what you cover in the Miss Dis presentations?
Yeah, in most recent months, we've had a very strong focus on elections because we're in election season. We start with some definitions about mis and disinformation and the difference. We talk about how to spot it, how to stop it, and how to report it. We talk a little bit about AI and its impact on media. We talk about publications and bias, or broadcasters and bias. And then we do kind of a deep dive on elections. And in many of our presentations, we've included a couple representatives from the elections department. And they talk about a very interesting study that they have completed a few months ago about trust levels of voters, trust in the elections process by voters, which is, we all probably can realize, is a big issue in many states across the country. And it's been incredibly fun and rewarding to work with them. They do about a third of the presentation at the end and talk about the results from their study and how they're really doing a lot of outreach to the folks that seem the most skeptical about the integrity of the elections, as well as making real efforts to get younger voters, so 18 to 29, younger voters engaged in elections. So it's very exciting work. Sean can probably even say more than that. She works a lot with the elections department, but it's very exciting.
Another site people should use is vote411.org. I don't know if we talked about that very much, but I'll emphasize that again. And you can always go to the California Secretary of State site.
And I do want to emphasize that the election office and system in Contra Costa County is amazing. It is very reputable. It is very private. There's no risks involved. And if you want more information about that, there's actually programs you can go through with the elections department to help you understand exactly how they get the ballots, how they count them, how they are just, how that is all taken care of and kept confidential.
I'll just jump in here, Sue, and add to that, because I was thinking the same thing at the same moment that you mentioned. Our county is an exceptional county. They won several national awards for their work in democracy. They have gotten a grant, and they've spent that money on upgrading even more secure opportunities for the County Office of Election. And I recommend to all of you to consider reaching out to our County Office of Election and talk to them about becoming a certified election observer, what is called a CEO. It requires a bit of time, both online and in person, where you go to the County Office of Election and you go walk through and see where they store all the ballots, because they have to keep them for a certain amount of time, all of the paper ballots, how they're counted and the machines and how they work. Nothing gets opened out of your envelope until your envelope's gone through about 5 times collecting the data. So it's a really wonderful program, and I highly recommend it. Once you go through it, it's really you just come out of there feeling very good about what's going on with our ballot.
Sean, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Wow,
So
what a
Sue and Janet, I'm going to ask you to say goodbye to us right now and turn down your video and your
Thank you all very much.
yeah, thank you.
I want to thank all of the people that have been here today and joined us on behalf of the League of Women Voters Diablo Valley and West Contra Costa County, as well as the county office, our Contra Costa County Library and CCTV. A genuine thank you to both Janet and Sue for being here today and helping us to understand those propositions that all of us have to make decisions about. Thank you, Ms. Vanessa Cardenas, for providing the Spanish interpretation to today's webinar. The service is jointly funded by the Contra Costa County Library and the League of Women Voters Diablo Valley. Today's community conversation, Get the Lowdown on 2024 California Propositions Pros and Cons, is being rebroadcast on CCTV on the following days. This webinar will also be available on the YouTube channels of the League of Women Voters Diablo Valley and the Contra Costa County Library. Information about our next community conversations will be coming soon. We're currently working on that. Community conversations programs are a partnership between the League of Women Voters Diablo Valley and the League of Women Voters West Contra Costa County, the County Library, and CCTV. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization encouraging informed and active participation in government. The League never endorses or opposes candidates, as Janet reiterated in her presentation, nor political parties. We influence public policy through education and advocacy. We invite community members to join the League and support the work we do. We welcome men and women, so please join. Thank you so much for being with us today.